for me then to like upload it on our
Of course.
YouTube and stuff like that. Easier
Yeah.
for people to find it. So yay for, what is today? Wednesday? Thursday.
Today is Thursday.
My kids are still on summer break. Good morning. Yay. It looks like, can you all hear us okay?
Can you hear us okay?
Just let us know. So I know it's morning over there. It's afternoon in Germany.
I'm sure it's evening somewhere for some people.
Right? It's cocktail hour somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, sounds like everyone's saying yes, they can hear us. Awesome. So then we'll kind of get started. So first I want to introduce Ben Lipford and talk about how I know Ben and why I thought, like, I don't know, Ben's brain intrigues me in many ways. So Ben was in our 2021 to 2022 run of No More Effing Around with myself, Kirsten Lewis, and Jenna Scholdice. And just I found always really interesting your input in class, as well as your processes, and your brain works in a way I think that many of us are jealous of in terms of just how organized, and I don't know.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yes, I could imagine. So, but it works great. And one of the other things that really intrigued me is immediately, I think it was like our first class, where we had started discussing, what are you working on? How's your business going? What's been going on? And you said, hey, I do these year in the life stories where your clients get to, basically buy in and purchase for the entire year their sessions, like a subscription or a membership.
Yep.
And you're consistently going to them. And I was like, oh my God, that's great. So many people want to learn about this. They've asked about it a lot. And you're like, well, I've been doing it. And I'm like, okay, well, then we better have you teach us how to do it because it sounds amazing. So before we get into all of that, Ben, tell us a little bit about your background. I know previously you were more wedding photography. Like, when did you switch to family? Tell us all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, my name is Ben Lipford. I run and operate Ben Lipford Photography. It's just benlipford.com if you want to check out some of my work. I started out in photography actually at a student newspaper at Georgia Tech. I studied engineering. I have an undergrad and a master's in engineering, which is one of the reasons why my brain works a little bit differently than some photographers, because I don't come from an artistic or a traditionally artistic background, at least from an education standpoint. And then I got connected with some wedding photographers at Georgia Tech. And so I didn't think I wanted to be a professional photographer. I was dead set against it. So I did engineering and I've had an engineering job. But on the weekends, I second shot weddings with some friends of mine for about 10 years. And that got so busy and I started booking some of my own that it just didn't make sense to have two full-time jobs, basically. I think one year I worked a full-time job and shot 32 weddings. So it was a little bit intense. I was single at the time, so that made it a little bit easier. But so I kind of made the switch about 6 years ago where I did some part-time engineering work while I built my own photography business, and I did weddings. And since then, I have transitioned more into the family documentary sphere. My tilt at weddings, or my specialty at weddings, was always kind of documentary photography anyway. Not really a focus on portraiture, but mainly a focus on what the event feels like and what it looks like and the joy and the terror that sometimes happens at weddings and the funny moments and that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of a natural transition into family photography anyway. And I've just fallen in love with photographing families. I also do high school seniors, kind of again tilted in that documentary way. I do some studio portraiture. I do some commercial work. So I kind of have my hands in a bunch of different stuff. But right now, most of what of my photos, my photography is family documentary.
And do you feel like that's where your heart lies with family photography?
For sure.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It captures I think where my heart lies in photography is capturing who people are on the inside.
Hmm.
not trying to just focus on what they look like, which is what a lot of photography, at least the traditional family photography especially, tends to be. So like, let's set up something that looks perfect so that my family looks perfect,
Right.
looks the way that I want it to look, maybe, or that I wish, or that my friends think that it's going to be good. And I think family documentary photography especially lets me in to connect with people on a more deeper level, and then photograph really who they are, the parts of their lives that they really love, that they're sometimes embarrassed that they love. So that's really what I love to capture. And I think
I
family documentary lets me do that.
Yeah, I can imagine these year in the life sessions give you so much access compared to even like, we want access in our normal, like whether that be a half day session or full day or whatever. Over time, even during the day, we get more and more access, but repeatedly photographing the same family over and over consistently, I can imagine the access is incredible. What you get from like from the first session you're doing versus the very last, I'm sure it's like incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. It's on just a 1 day off session, even on the longer sessions, it's still just one little snapshot of their life. And it can be a significant snapshot, and it can be really powerful and create some really fascinating and powerful moments. But being able to have those deeper connections as you build over the whole year, where you're checking in every month and you're texting with them 3 or 4 or 5 times a month. Hey, I sent the photos over. This one was so really cool, and they're
Right.
responding back almost immediately. And then the next month, especially with the kids, they start to get used to you coming too, and they
Yeah.
are anticipating you coming, and they are excited that you're there, and they know who you are, and they're like, oh, look at my new shoes, and you're like, oh, those are cool shoes from last time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then to your point, because you build those deeper relationships and the sessions are ongoing, you're able to have a lot more access to moments where they don't traditionally think of as photo moments or photo
Right.
days.
Right.
Even with full day sessions, they're a little bit structured, and they're a little bit
Yeah.
set up to some degree. Like, oh, well, we want to go to the pool because we love going to the pool. Oh, we love to do back barbecue, so we'll do all of these things. But they don't normally do all of those things in the same day.
In one
And
day.
so when
Right.
you're
Right.
able to just say, hey, I'm just going to join your family for an hour this month, whenever, like, when is a good time for you? Like, when is a good time for us to connect? And I just show up. I think I say this in the course, and it's a really great example. I had one family who completely forgot I was coming. So they scheduled their session like a month in advance, and I sent them the reminder text, and he thought I said Thursday, and it was Thursday, but he thought it was like Friday. And so I show up at dinner time, and the house is a complete disaster. The kids are like half dressed. They're like pulling their hair out because they had a hard day at work.
Right.
And I knock on the door, and they're like, who the heck is at the door?
Right.
And I walk in with my camera ready and just start shooting. And they're like, oh my gosh, we completely forgot. And it's one of their favorite sessions
Of course.
because it
Yeah.
wasn't anything set up. It was just what their nighttime routine looked like now. And
Right. The
it
normal
was a really
chaos.
special, because one of my favorite sessions, I have an award-winning photo from there, which was really cool,
Oh,
and it's one of their favorite sessions. They kept talking about how just they loved that moment that they forgot, and that would never happen on a one-off session, right?
can
There's
you
too much
imagine?
intentionality. They paid all this money for this one thing. They're not going to forget it. They're going to
Right.
have the house tidy and the kids slightly more clean than they normally are, and it's going to be in the back of their mind all day while they're at work, and so it's you end up with these really special moments that aren't traditional in any sense of the word.
Right. Can you imagine? I just was like thinking about this while you were talking. If you have these year-long clients that have like booked you in and you said, okay, I'm going to come the week of the 20th at some point, and you're not actually giving them the date or the time, and
Yeah,
just knowing that like, oh, they have nothing planned this week, or
that's a really interesting idea.
like, or maybe they do have like swim practice or something, but you know what time swim practice is. So you're showing up a little bit before and going along for the ride to swim or like whatever it is, just
Yeah.
to make it even more spontaneous and, real, I guess.
That's a really cool idea. It would have to be like on the last half, like in the,
Right.
the last half of the year. It wouldn't be like the first session, hey, I'm just going to show up. Um,
Surprise.
but because that would I think that would be too much. But once you build that trust and that
Yeah,
relationship, then I think you could easily sell it to certain families for
for
sure.
sure. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, how did you very first get into doing these Year in the Life sessions?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So my daughter was born right on the outset of COVID. She was born about 2 weeks before in the U.S. everything shut down, and so we were locked down. Like everybody went on maternity paternity leave with us. That's what it kind of felt like.
Right.
And so in talking with my mom about the way that they did photos, because I was stuck at home with my daughter, I just took a bunch of photos of her, right? And my mom said that when we were growing up, when we were kids, they would go to the department store. All of her friends would buy like a package of 4 sessions or 6 sessions or 10 sessions where you would just, whenever you were at the mall and you felt like going, you just pop in, they do a few portraits and you'd walk out and you'd be done, right? And so that was really intriguing to me because in this time of everybody's locked down, everybody's shut away, how can I start to do some business development? Like, how can I develop something that
Right.
maybe I could like launch as COVID is going away? That was kind of my thought. And so I started this thought process and I started developing this product with a documentary family spin, like with the way that I photograph it. What would that look like? Especially because a lot of family photographers at the time were doing those like porch shots, which
Right.
personally I wasn't a big fan of for my business. I could
Right.
see how they fit into other people's, and so I started developing this idea, and I reached out to some past clients and found 5 families, past clients, to do a pilot program. And this is one of the things that I talk about in the course. I highly recommend doing a pilot program where you can test all of these ideas and these things out on a set of families that know you're still testing it out.
Right.
And it was wildly successful. All of them really, really loved it. It helped that I was able to come to their home and, we were safe and wearing masks and, doing all the COVID stuff. But as COVID started to wane, these families started to go out and we were able to kind of capture their venture back out into society. I had one family move houses. That was what was featured in the blog post. And so there was so much life change that happened right on the outset of COVID as it kind of started to wane its impact on society. And it was a really, really great experience. And so I just kept going with it and still fine tuning and changing and adjusting some things, but
Right.
it's been really great.
That's awesome. So I want to you mentioned you reached out to past clients, which I think is super smart, right?
Yep.
Because these are past clients seem like the ones that would be more up to committing to having their family photographed for a year.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So in the course, what I talk about, there's a whole lesson that we talk about the who's, like who are we selling this session to? And the easiest way to get into this is to reach out to your past, like best of clients, the clients that just fell in love with you, that their kids really loved you, that they really just wanted more of you, and they didn't really have the money to do a bunch of sessions, or they just time wise it felt hard, or life just caught up and you haven't connected back with them, and it was a really great. That's absolutely what I would recommend doing, especially for your first time off, because in the sessions, what you end up doing is spending time with their friends. And so
Right.
you'll have photos with their friends. They're your ideal clients. Their friends are likely your ideal clients or in that sphere, or with their family, and their brother has a family. And so you're able to connect, and it's a way of easily targeting some people who already love what you do, who will be more forgiving in the client experience side of things as you're
Right.
developing that. Because that's a really challenging piece of this, which is what the course is a lot is about. And that as you build those connections, you start to broaden your sphere of who's, and it's just a really great way of kind of organically broadening the
Right. So it actually
session.
ends up allowing you to even market to new clients, not necessarily for this year-long version of it, but because you're running into them, et cetera, and you're pulling on new clients to get, you know, maybe a half day or whatever, a one-off session, who will then potentially start doing the year with you as well. I wanted to ask you, how many clients do you have on your year-long, what do you call it, a subscription or membership? How are
So
you?
I just call it a year in the life session. I have day in the life sessions and I have year in the life sessions, and that's kind of what I call it. It is a little confusing sometimes, but it works with my branding, and I think people kind of understand what it is.
Right,
So that's kind of what I call it. But I think there's a ton of different ways that you can call it. Right
right,
now, I just had some people drop off, and I have some people joining back on at the beginning of the year. So I only have one going on right now. But for me, the most I would probably have going at one time is maybe like 7 or 8.
right.
Because
Otherwise I get too.
it's just a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. And if you haven't done a year in the life session before, again, in the course, I recommend doing a pilot program with like 3 to 5 families, because there's a lot of stuff that pops up that you don't really think about is going to be a problem until you get 6 months in with a family and they've consistently booked their schedule, like their sessions late, and they keep rescheduling them. And so having those boundaries set in place was one of the
Right,
things that it took me some time to figure out. And right now, the way that I kind of think about it is I have a base income level for the year. And that's what these sessions provide me. So I can be more selective in the one-off sessions that I take, or the commercial clients that I take, or the mentoring clients that I take. I can be more selective because I have this base level that's kind of
consistent
like set
income.
aside.
Right, right. That's awesome. So in the course, I'm just going to mention, since we're talking about it, so Ben has made a course for us in the Learning Library, which if you haven't been on the Learning Library before, be sure to check it out. But his course is there, which basically goes through all of the ins and outs, like you said, of developing your pilot program, creating this workflow, boundaries, how to price it, all of that good stuff. It's included in the DFP Learning Library membership, 20 euro a month, or €7 a month for DFP members. So all the information, like the deep dive information of this, is in the course. I'm just gonna pull up, and if anyone has questions while Ben and I are talking, go ahead and write them. I'm just switching back and forth between screens to be able to check if anyone asks anything. But I was going to go ahead and really quickly show, here, I should share my screen. Give me a sec. Can you see that? Is it sharing? Yeah, right. Okay. So you can see here, there's just the intro, and he goes over the why, who, what, when, and where. And pretty much everything, like I said, what we're talking about here, you can see and learn about in depth in Ben's course that's on the Learning Library. So be sure to check it out. I added the link, I'll add it again. But if you want to learn even more about it, you can check it out there. Ben, what else do you want to tell us?
I think the most important thing that I say in the course, this is like the very first lesson, is the why. I think these can be really, really great sessions for a lot of photographers. This is a really great way of kind of filling in the gaps, of having something going. But there are a few key why nots. Like, who doesn't this work with? That is a really important thing. It can be really exciting to go launch a new thing and to think everything is going to go great, but being transparent on the front end, there's like 3 big why nots, and we talk about this in the course too, and ways to get around these. But the first one is building relationships. Deeper relationships with clients gives you more access, but it also makes you a friend outside of the session. And so one of the hard things I had to deal with in that vein was one of my clients actually got divorced in the middle of their year, like towards the end of their year. And so we had to navigate that. It's a photography thing, but it's also a personal thing. And so I was really close with that family, and so navigating that was sometimes difficult. Some of my photos actually were used in their divorce case, which is really weird to me. Again, this is not to scare anybody, but this is just kind of like on the outset. Building deeper relationships means that you have a deeper relationship. And so you kind of have to value that more than you would just a normal client relationship.
Right.
The second, why not, is schedule rigidity. So I book some of my sessions up to a year in advance. And so that means I have to be really disciplined with my personal calendar and working with my family and having my blackout dates kind of set aside and having some firm boundaries in place. And then the third kind of why not is you're going to make less money per session than you would on a one-off session. But the kind of the flip side of that is that you get consistent income. And so as long as you're able to kind of balance those three things, I think this can fit into anybody's workflow and anybody's kind of system and anybody's business, as long as you're cognizant of those three kind of why nots. And like I said, in the course, we kind of dive into each of those and how are we going to work around some of that stuff and how are we going to create boundaries around our schedule and how are we going to price it in a way that keeps me profitable, but also gives everybody kind of that win-win. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that's one of the things that we kind of tackle in the course. It's not just like a rainbows and puppy dogs kind of thing. We're going to like look at the hard stuff too and see how we can kind of work our business and set it up around it.
Right. I watched and read the course already, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Sure.
Do you go over, one of the biggest questions we have when it comes to these kind of, or that I've seen pop up in our Facebook group is like, how do I get started? Which I know you cover there, you talk about your pilot program, but also when it comes to like delivery and the workflow of it and all of that, do you cover that in the course?
I do. Yeah, we definitely talk about that because that can be a challenging thing to navigate as well. Different photography businesses deliver different things. Some people do in-person sales and they deliver just albums and prints and stuff, which is one of the things that I do. Some just deliver digital files. And so how do we navigate including products in those packages and what do those deliverables look like is definitely something that we tackle. The one big one of the big things that I talk about is that we should be including the digital files in our packages, at least a portion of them, because as we go per month, what I recommend, this is what I do, is we have the monthly session and then a week later have had that session edited and it's uploaded to their online gallery. So they immediately have access to those photos that they can go enjoy and share and share with friends. And it kind of works as a good marketing thing too.
Right.
So it really wouldn't be that great to wait the whole year and then not see the photos.
Imagine. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, here's these photos from January. It just doesn't, and it's December, right? That piece doesn't really make sense. So I think as long as we're okay with doing that, with including a product, at least one, the digital files in your session packages, and we kind of dive deep into how that looks like, and
right. And that
as long as you're doing
like
that,
the web size or the social media size for them to
exactly,
to at least be like sharing as the year goes on, or what have you. So I think that's great.
Yeah, all of my clients, that's how I structure my packages. All of the digital files are included in all of them, and every client has bought at least a book from me. So it's a big time commitment for them. It's a big emotional commitment for them. So to get to the end of the year and just have things on a hard drive, it just doesn't feel right.
So I have two questions that popped up from the Facebook group. The first one is, with your pilot program clients, did you charge them? And if so, was it like a full amount, or did you do it like at a discounted rate for them, or how did that work? Yeah,
that's a really great question. We in the especially the family documentary sphere, we do a lot of portfolio work, right? We're working on this specific thing in our photography, or we're trying to just focus on finding this moment, or being patient, or shooting through the moment, or whatever we're working on. And we do those for free. And that makes sense because we're working on something and it's unproven and we're not really sure what's going on. I do not recommend doing a year in the life session that way.
I couldn't imagine.
Spending a year of your life
commitment, yeah,
is a really big commitment. And it just doesn't make sense not to charge something for it. It doesn't also make sense to charge full price for it because the photos are going to be great. They're already going to be up to your awesome level, right? But the client experience is such a challenge that it doesn't really make sense to charge full price for something that you don't have fully refined.
Right.
And so I charged my clients about a quarter to a third of what my full price sessions were. So I charged my pilot families $125 a month.
Right.
And so, which is about a third to a half of what that same package would be now per month. But I also asked a few things of them. So that was their monetary payment, but I also asked for them to commit to the whole year so that they wouldn't bow out halfway through or go in 3 months and then, bow out, and that they would provide honest feedback. And honestly, the feedback is the thing that is the most valuable piece of the pilot program. This is something that I talk about in the course as well. Mm-hmm. Getting that feedback is so helpful in fine-tuning your pricing, in fine-tuning your client experience, those sorts of things, because your region, your local culture, the local pricing atmosphere of photos in your area, all of that, those clients will be able to speak directly into. And so selecting the right pilot program families, and even if you're charging just enough to make it like worth your time, their feedback is so essential to it. It was, I'll say it like this: it was so essential to me being able to launch my sessions profitably and have a good launch, that it's invaluable. Right. So you may be charging a little bit less on the pilot program to figure things out, but their feedback has been so helpful.
Right. And that allows you the room for working out any of the kinks, especially in those first couple of months, with building your workflow and saying, okay, this works or doesn't work. And like, oh, sorry, I thought I could get these 2 in 3 days, but because I have 4 other families doing this, it's actually going to take me, in my case, it'd be like 12 weeks.
Oh yeah, I changed so much. I went in thinking, oh dude, I got this figured out. This is going to be easy. And I changed my package, like the way that they're set up. I changed what their pricing is. I changed how I was taking payment. I thought, oh, I'll just get them to send me payment every month. Yeah, that's not going to work. That doesn't work very well. I changed my scheduling system. I added so many boundaries. Like I started off with no boundaries. And so I had one weekend where I would do 4 sessions in one weekend. And I had promised them a 1-week turnaround, and that didn't work out, right? So it really helped a lot. So the course will help you jumpstart that some, but there's going to be special things to your business. There's going to be special things in your culture and the where you live. All of those things, that getting those people's feedback is going to be so invaluable. And don't be afraid to change things, right?
Right, exactly.
That's what they're signing up for.
Be adaptable.
Exactly.
So the other question we have here is, what products are delivered at the end of the year, i.e. an album, and do they get something each session? So you had mentioned already, you give them some digital files, and are they included in the costs, or do you have a la carte pricing?
So that's a really great question. So the way that we set up our packages and our pricing is it's a lot more complicated than a single session, right? Because we kind of need to deliver something over time, but how do we make sure that we price that without like messing up our other pricing, and how do we make sure that we're all settled there? So we spend about an hour in the course talking about that, and I go through in depth on how to price it and different pricing structures that we can go through. But me personally, this was one of the things that radically changed due to feedback from my pilot program families. But personally, the way that I have mine priced is instead of varying the products that are in the different sessions, I vary how often the sessions occur, right? So I have a quarter, or like a seasonal package where a family can pick one session every 3 months. So they'll have this 4 for the year. I have an every other month. So every other month they get to pick a session, and then I have an every month. And then all that's included in there is the digital files, and then everything else is a la carte at the end of the year. So we have like a year in review meeting. That's kind of the ordering session for the year that only happens once at the end of the year. And that's when families will buy books or presents for people or that kind of stuff. And they can order on an a la carte menu throughout the year, but they get a discount if they order at that last session. So that's kind of a short answer to a really big topic that we spend a lot of time on in the course.
Yeah, for sure. And just to touch on that, on something with that, I don't know, this came into my head while you're talking. You had mentioned you take on clients like on a rolling basis. So it's not like everyone's starting in January and everyone's finishing in December. It's like you might get 2 new clients in January and then 1 new in March and then 3 new in May, and they'll go from May to April. And right, am I correct? And
that's right. Yeah, that's right. So one of the easiest ways that I've had to get people into my sessions is actually to take a client that I just photographed. So I'm at their ordering session, they just see the photos, they see the slideshow, they see the awesome products. And then at the end of that, I'm like, hey, this could be the first session of your year in the life. Everything you've paid to now can just go towards your year in the life session. And the value proposition of that year in the life session is so good that so many families are just like, oh, that's an obvious choice. And they just roll right in. And so rather than having a like, hey, every January, I'm going to start a bunch of people, having it on a rolling basis makes it a little bit easier to do that. To say, oh man, I really loved this family. Let's do more of this. Or if at their session, they're like, oh man, we have a birthday coming up in a few months, and then we have our anniversary thing, and then we have this. You're able to just say, hey, well, I have something that's made for that.
right.
And yeah, so it makes it a little bit easier to sell because you're talking to people who just saw the amazing photos that you produced, are on that a little like emotional high from the photos, and you're able to just say, well, hey, let's just do this more. And it's an easier sell than trying to get people who've never booked you before to spend a whole year with you, right? It's a little bit harder of a sell there.
For sure. I like that idea though, of getting the clients that just saw their session and saying, hey, I got this for you.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Something I was going to ask. You will do, like if someone's having,
makes it a little bit easier to do that.
oops, hold on. Shit, I was refreshing for the Facebook questions. So if they're having a birthday party and they want to use that for their session, if they're in your program, your membership program, you're okay with that.
Yeah. So the way that I have it set up is I basically say, you get 1 hour a month. I don't care what we do. We can go do portraits. We can go sit around and do nothing. We can hang out in the backyard. We can go skydiving. Like, I don't care what we do. You have me for 1 hour. And the advantage, I talk about this a little bit in the pricing thing, but the advantage to just doing 1 hour is that it incentivizes them to extend that time. So, and then that's a really easy add-on, right? So,
so they'll just pay for the additional time.
If they just say, oh, we want 2 hours this month, cool. It's just a small little fee on top of that, right? Or, oh man, we have 2 birthdays this month. Can we do another session? Sure, we can just add on another session. And then it's much cheaper than it would be by itself, but it's like dropped in my lap. I didn't have to market for it. It's wrapped up already. They've already paid for the digital files. And so it's really easy to, I don't like the word upsell, but it kind of like have little add-ons.
Yeah.
Where you're benefiting your clients, whereas I feel like upselling kind of benefits you, but you're benefiting your clients in ways that lets them be creative. So like, oh man, we have swim lessons this month and we have a swim meet. Let's do both, right? And it makes it really easy for them to just push the button and do that.
Okay, I'm just checking if there's any other questions. Did you all have any other questions about this? Ben, was there anything else you wanted to add? Because I'm going to surprise you, and I really quickly want to talk about your communications since I have you.
Yeah, since we're here.
Yeah,
I don't think I have anything else on the year in the life stuff. I just highly recommend people to try it out. It's been a really, really cool thing. It's been a really fun thing. It's been a really great way of keeping me motivated every month. I always have sessions going. I always have somebody coming up next month. I'm always connecting with those same people. It's just been a really, really fun, cool thing. And I just highly recommend people trying it out.
That's awesome. Ben had also, hold on, I'm going to check one more, make sure before we move on to the next little thing. I thought since we have you, might as well throw this in here. Ben had also created another course for the Learning Library for us called Communicating Clearly. Hold on, I'm going to share
Yep.
my screen again. So on the Learning Library, in the $20 a month or whatever it is, or it is 20 euro a month or €7 a month for DFP members. But you get access to all of our course library. And Ben has also here this Communicating Clearly that he made, and it's also a brilliant course in terms of just getting your client shit together. Like that's the bottom line. So I think, yeah, I really think that it's beneficial for everybody to have a look at Communicating Clearly, because I think it's one of those things that we never really want to do. We don't want to set up the workflow. We don't want to, but it's one of those things that's once you do, it's kind of done. And then it's just
Yep.
small adjustments, like micro adjustments you might need to make. But Ben does a great job of walking you through it and giving some small bite-sized assignments that make setting up your workflow and communicating very easy. So is there anything you wanted to tell us about Communicating Clearly, Ben?
I think the idea for the course kind of popped up because I never felt like I was very good at communicating with my clients. Again, I come from an engineering background, so I talk fairly technically, and I'm used to sending emails to engineers, and so or at least when I started, for sure, I'm a little bit better now. And I think one of the most important things that we do for our clients is communicate what's happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
So often they just don't really know what to expect, and we can't really blame them for that, right? Especially in documentary family photography, everything is so loosey-goosey and it's a little bit feely, and it's not very structured, and some people just don't resonate well with that.
Right.
And so what I tried to do in the course was kind of package and structure a little bit of what I've learned and how I've kind of learned to communicate better with my clients. I'm also awful at sales calls. It's
Mm-hmm.
not my forte. And so having an outline put together where I can kind of mentally check through, okay, have I done this? Have I done that? How do we have everything kind of put aside? That's what the course is meant to do. It's meant to take the benefits of scripting, which is what a lot of business-minded people recommend doing. It's like script our interactions, which doesn't really float for me.
Yeah.
So we take the benefit of this scripted conversation, but we allow organic conversation to kind of flow around it, while
Right.
making sure that we don't forget to ask that important question or lead them in a specific way going through, or forget about connecting with them and building that relationship, or forget the wrap up at the very end where we're not really, like, we're giving them information during the meeting, but not reminding them of like what's going to happen now, or
Right.
even just like giving them space to ask questions can
Yeah.
be a really important thing. And so it's really helped me make sure that I don't forget those things. And so that's
Right.
what I tried to do in the course, was create a system that anybody could implement with just a few small steps, where you can have instantly better client communication and you can feel more confident.
Yes. I think that's key. And I agree with you. I think having just like your little bullet point checklist of things you need to discuss and do during the communication is so much it feels more innate than having just a script where you're like, hello.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling.
Hello, good sir. It is very nice to meet you. Let me look at my list here of questions to ask you, right? It just,
Exactly. So I
yeah,
think that's great. And especially like you said, that wrap up, I think even for photographers, sometimes we forget ourselves to like, oh, now's where you have to ask them, like, oh, so are you ready to book your session? Like, don't
right.
forget to ask that part, because otherwise it's like,
Yep.
it can just go, okay, well, I'll wait to hear from you, and that's it. Whereas you actually have to ask for the session, like,
Right.
are you ready to book, or what's going on here, and leading that conversation. So I think you cover quite a bit of that in the creating Communicating Clearly course as well. So I highly recommend everybody check out both of those. Like I said, Ben is a great teacher and has a great mind um, that sometimes I'm a little jealous of. I'm like, hey, you want to create my workflows for me, Ben?
I mean, sure. Yeah.
What's
Let's
funny
do it.
is I have mine pretty much done, but
Right.
I mean, they are done, but I should probably go over them again. So
Yeah.
maybe
It's
I'll,
not too many people that enjoy creating workflows, but
right?
I do enjoy that. So it, like I said, my brain is a little bit weird for an artistic person, but
Yeah.
um,
You just light
yeah,
up at the workflow.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, we're talking about workflows today. Yes.
We got
Yeah.
it. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we?
I think the only thing that I mentioned in both of the workshops, sorry, these earbuds keep falling out,
Okay.
is a really important kind of topic when doing education in general and when taking any of these courses is I'm a perfectionist. So when I hit the go button on something, I want it to be perfect out of the gate. And with both of these courses, this is really about making incremental updates and incremental upgrades to your business, to your plans, to your communication plan, to these things. And so I have this mantra that I say, and I talk about this in both courses, but it's the idea of progress over perfection. The goal of these courses, and really any education in general, should
Yeah.
be for us to make progress, not for us to create something that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
So any communication plan you put together, it's about creating something and then implementing it and then changing it. Or any new session thing that we're creating. It's not about, hey, I'm going to create the perfect one and it's going to be profitable right out of the gate and everything's, I'm not going to have to change
Right.
anything. It's really not about that, which is why there's a whole lesson kind of dedicated in both of these workshops to, okay, now that we have this thing, how do we make it better over the next 6 months to 2 years to 6 years to the life of
Right.
my business? How do we continually evaluate this and make it a little bit better? Because the goal is not perfection, it's progress. And so
Progress.
that's the last thing that I would really want to say.
No, I think that's a huge, huge point. And I think it depends on where people follow or fall on the Enneagram. No, I'm just kidding.
It might. It definitely might.
But that is something I run into quite a bit as a mentor, as well as keeping that reminder of like, you sometimes you just got to do it.
Right.
And then you can tweak where you need to as time goes on. Because I know, I think just creatives in general, first of all, we like to research things to death because it allows us to stay safe. Like
Right.
not making that first step. We're like, oh, I'm in research phase. I'm in research phase. Whereas,
Yes.
with any class or program that you're taking, the research phase, yeah, it's important, but then you eventually have to actually make moves. And yeah, progress over perfection. Done is better than perfect. That's what I always
That's
say.
right. It is better than perfect
It
most
is.
of the time.
That's right. Unless it's steak. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to check one more time, make sure I didn't miss any questions.
Yeah.
And just really quick refreshing. Give me one sec. I think we're good. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much, Ben, for giving us your time and your brain. I look forward to getting even more courses from you because like I said, I just like the way your brain works. So everyone go to the Learning Library to check out both. There's the You're in the Life stories, which Ben goes through the ins and outs of getting a pilot program set up, pricing, figuring out your workflow, all of that for You're in the Life programs or memberships or whatever you want to call them. And then also the communicating clearly, like he said, it helps you communicate clearly. I mean, what more could you
Does.
want from that? So you can check it out at learn.dfpeducation.com. And I'll add the link in as well. And like I said, thanks so much, Ben. You are a superstar.
Thank you. Nice
Thanks.
to see you guys.
Bye.
Hope to connect with you. Bye.
Okay.
How'd we do?